Hey guys, long time no see. Sorry about the delay in more videos. I've been having quite the week. So I had a bunch of dental work done over the past 2 weeks on top of having a flare-up of my Ehlers Danlos syndrome. And oh my God, it's just kind of been the week from hell. So my Ehlers Danlos has these flare-ups. It's a genetic condition. It's like a connective tissue disorder. So it's basically a pain illness. And I just took a pain pill. So if I start to get a little loopy in the middle of this recording, just ignore it. It'll be very much like squirrel all over the place. Yeah, that was one of my favorite movies. See, it's starting already. So there's been that, and there's also been a lot of dental work being done. One of the things that Ehlers-Danlos affects is the teeth, and it's one of those little known things that affects the tooth enamel, and so my enamel has just been shot. I had chips in the front, and I had all kinds of cavities going on, and I kind of look like a crack whore, so which is why I kind of don't do a lot of like toothy smiles in my videos, you know. And when I did, I was using a filter just to be kind of like, so it wasn't, the focus wasn't on my teeth, it was more on the content. But now I don't have to do that anymore, which is yay. So it's almost done. It was like, 4 hours a pop at every visit, and I've got 2 more to go. And it was just like, one of the things about Ehlers Danlos is that we don't respond to pain medication like a lot of people do. It takes twice the amount, generally speaking, of things like lidocaine shots. And so I was like halfway through, they had to kind of double the amount. And another thing that lidocaine shots at the dentist, it contains epinephrine, which kind of makes your heart go crazy. So it's like you're having an anxiety attack. I'm not used to anxiety attacks. It's one of those things that's kind of new to me. And so I was like, my heart's going like this. And I'm like, what the fuck's going on? And yeah, it was just really unpleasant. And plus, I'm hormonal. And if you're a woman watching this, you know that like your pain threshold lowers considerably. So I was just like, oh my God, it was a nightmare experience. And so once the pain stuff wore off, I was like, ugh. And I was waiting for my insurance to approve my next round of pain medication, my pain pills, because, they prescribe pain medication for Ehlers-Danlos. And plus I've got arthritis on top of it. I know this is kind of like off topic of what I'm supposed to be talking about here, but kind of just giving you an update of what's been going on and why I haven't been doing videos recently. So it's just been like a lot of pain, a lot of just bullshit that I've been dealing with, and just a lot of stuff. So that's what's been going on. Another update is I've got a new phone. My dad surprised me with a brand new iPhone, like the latest version, and I've been using a iPhone 5, which is why my videos are so grainy all the time. That's like ancient tech, and I've just been using it and not replacing it because it's like, money's tight for me, especially since losing my job to my illness. I've just been kind of waiting for disability to kick in because I've just been, the pain levels are just insane. Like I have to walk with the cane sometimes. I just can't, oh, there it is. Hold on one second. I have to get my hand brace because it's kind of like painful to hold this stupid computer. Give me a sec. Okay. And I usually have to wear like a back corset and things like that when I'm walking around, and it's been a nightmare. So anyway, squirrel, where was I? Yeah, so there's just been a lot going on. And anyway, my dad got me this new phone because he was like, you need a new phone. My old phone was kind of jacking up on me. And like I handle all of his calls from the VA because he's going through cancer right now, which is why I moved back in here with my dad. And since he's kind of deaf, I handle all his his medicine, his like pharmacy stuff. I handle all of his appointments for cancer treatment. And he's like, you need a phone? I'm like, yeah, I'll just get like a slightly more modern version. But I wasn't thinking of getting a 15. I was thinking maybe like a 12 or something. So anyway, he surprised me with the latest version, and he's really good with tech, and so he figured it all out. He used to be in tech when he was younger, and he's 80 years old, and he's like, these are the specs we're getting you. And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, I've got like the most pricey version of the latest iPhone, and it's really nice. I mean, like, this camera is insane. I can't believe the quality. It's just like, I don't need to do all these like, upscaling, HD filters and things like that to make it look halfway decent. It's just like, bam, we're ready. So yeah, I'm excited about that. So the videos are going to be a lot better. I'm just like, yay. Anyway, so that's what's been going on. That's the one positive thing that's been happening. My pain clinic, they found a closer facility, so I don't have to worry about like hauling my ass with my cane for like 3 blocks after I get off the bus. So things have really been things have been improving basically, so I can do my physical therapy. Hopefully that'll help. But yeah, it's just been a lot of shit going on. Anyway, so hopefully I'll be doing more videos a little bit more consistently from now on, especially since my pain medication finally came through. So anywho, my video today, because I was thinking about, this is what occurred to me while I was in the dentist chair, is that like, man, like the amount of pain that I was in with my illness was just like astounding, because like the pain meds don't work as well, at least some of them don't. And I was like, oh, that's right. Like some people think that people with ASPD, psychopaths can't feel pain. And I was like, oh, what is the other stupid shit that people think about psychopaths? And I'm like thinking this while I'm all loopy in the chair, like they're drilling into my skull. This is what it was like. I was helping distract myself, and I'm like, oh, there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's this one influencer on YouTube who kind of perpetuates this myth that psychopaths have this, they don't blink, which kills me, because what she does, you probably know her. I can't think of her name because she's like irrelevant to me, but she's got this long brown hair. I think she just dyed it blonde actually. And she's been online for a while on YouTube, and she's like, yeah, I had to train myself to blink so people wouldn't think that I was weird. And she'll cut her videos. You can tell like, because they're kind of like, they hitch in the middle of her like her speech or whatever. So it makes it look like she doesn't blink. It's like, dude, people blink. It's a physiological reaction. Like we have to wet our eyeballs for God's sake. We're not like automaton robots. And I was thinking about how that's just one of the stupid misconceptions people have about people with ASPD. We have to blink. It's gotta wet our eyeballs. And especially like, I've got allergies. I probably blink more than most people. Plus I have light colored eyes. When you have blue eyes, like the light, like with this light shining at me right now, I'm like, yes, the sun. So that's one of the misconceptions people have, is that we don't blink like normal people, right? One of the many. Another thing that people have, so that's one. Another misconception that they have, that we stare at people like Ted Bundy, like these really wide staring eyes, That's another one. Although I will say that people have said that I stare very intently at them during conversation and like don't really break eye contact, which can be disconcerting. I don't know if that's an ASPD thing or just a me thing. It could just be something that I do. Although I have been told that many times, and so I have like, I kind of remind myself like to break eye contact occasionally so I don't like come off as being like too intense, but I don't have my eyes like really, really large when I do it. I'm just, normal. I just don't break eye contact frequently, because I'm just really intent on listening to what people are saying, I'm not thinking of the next thing I'm going to say, like off in La La Land. I pay attention. And another thing is that people can tell a psychopath or someone with ASPD because we've got really dead, cold, staring eyes, which is another bullshit thing. You can't tell someone that's got ASPD by looking at their eyes. It's just, that's stupid. In fact, one of our groups recently posted a picture of their eyes and was like, can you tell that I've got ASPD? And I was like, oh God, here we go. You can't tell. Like, one of the women who I really like in our group was like, well, I can tell you've got Sanpaku. If you don't know what that is, that's like if someone has a little space of white between the lower lid and then the pupil. There's like a little space of white, which in Chinese medicine means that you've got some kind of like an imbalance in your like chi or something like that. Which I was dying laughing when she said that. I don't even know if I have that or not, but I was like, that's the correct response. So no, that's another fallacy. We don't have weird eyes in any sense of the word at all, unless we might like and have an intent look when we're having a conversation with you. Maybe we don't break eye contact as much. Possibly. That might just be me though. Another one is don't feel pain. We do feel pain. Some of us have, the ability to sort of compartmentalize it and kind of, ignore it more than others, because that's anybody who's been physically abused. As I keep saying, we have our, all of us have got childhood trauma. All of us under the cluster B groups, not just ASPD. Cluster B personality disorders all stem from childhood abuse, not just ASPD. And a lot of it often was physical abuse. And if you have a lot of physical childhood abuse, you have to learn to sort of bury that a little bit so you're not experiencing, you dissociate is the word I'm looking for. So when you dissociate from physical pain, you kind of put it down in another place so you're not experiencing it as intently. So that might be true in that sense, that we dissociate from physical pain to some degree. Although, I'm sorry, when you're sitting in a dentist chair and it's like right in your head, it's hard to dissociate from that. It really is. Except if you're like thinking of something else, possibly, like the way I was thinking about, misleading shit about psychopaths to kind of distract myself. You can do that, but when you're getting like a shot into your gum or in your palate, it's hard to dissociate from that, especially if you haven't been experiencing physical abuse for quite a long time and it's been something that you haven't had to deal with. Like, your ability to dissociate kind of lessens over time, you know what I mean? It's just one of those natural things that happens. And I haven't had to deal with that for quite some time. Now, if you've been, perpetuating that kind of thing by being in physically violent relationships, which I was for a while, you can learn how to, you keep perpetuating that and like you compartmentalize your pain and you kind of dissociate, but that's been a long time for me. So anyway, that's another myth. We don't feel pain. We do feel pain. Of course we feel pain. We've got nerve endings, it's not like one of those, there's like a condition where people don't process pain normally, but we don't have that. It's not like a physical malady, or, that would be actually kind of cool if we didn't feel pain, but we do. Another one is that we speak very slowly and quietly and intently because we're very creepy people. No, that's not true. As you can tell, I kind of speak really quickly. I speak fast. So no, that's nonsense. It's all this stuff where it, perpetuates this myth that we're very creepy, staring, like this idea of like what psychotic means is that we speak slowly and creepily and stare and have these dead eyes and never blink like we're some kind of reptile hissing at you, like, no, that's nonsense. Another one is that we lack nuanced thinking, or just think in terms of black and white. We have got no like ability to be creative. That is also nonsense. I think it stems from the idea that, which is the next one, that we can't experience love, which is also a fallacy. I'm a very creative thinker. I'm a writer. I don't think in terms of black and white. I think in all kinds of shades of gray. I don't think in like moral judgment in terms of like good and evil, like Kantian thought. I don't have that at all. In fact, when I was in college and we were studying philosophy, I hated Kant because he thought in terms of very black and white moral codes. That's not me at all. And of course we can love. I talked about how I loved my son very, very much. I love my cats very much. I reserve it for a very select few group of people. Like, I'm not like one of those people who like this feels love for the entire world and pink fluffy unicorns dancing on rainbows and kumbaya. I'm not like that. And I don't think anyone who's got ASPD is like that in general, because we have like the, kind of the low emotional empathy. Hold on, I lost my page. I was talking for so long that I lost my, I gotta sign back into my computer. We've got the low cognitive empathy, which affects, of course, our, the range of emotion when it comes to like love and empathy is certainly lower than a lot of people, but we certainly do feel love. That's a perpetuated myth that really needs to stop. It's ridiculous. And the same thing for people with NPD, like narcissists can feel love. Of course we can. We're human beings, we can certainly have issues with experiencing love, like maybe in a normal sense that a lot of people do. It might not be the same, look the same that it does for some people without being neurodivergent, because we are neurodivergence, it can be a bit different for us, but we're certainly experiencing it. We just might look at it a little bit different than it does for you. Okay. Our only way that we can interact with people is using them and manipulating them. Again, I always talk about how ASPD and all these cluster B disorders exist on a spectrum. And if you're lower on the spectrum in terms of self-awareness and getting therapy and all that, we certainly can be very manipulative people who just use. That can be certainly true. But again, if you're a little bit more high functioning, you can get over that sense of, we only see people as like tools for our own, our own purposes, and all self, I'm sorry, like the medicine is kicking in now and I can't think of words. Like, the words are just eluding me. But it's not for our own purposes. We can actually relate to people on a more, give and take level, where we see people as, not just these inhuman, non-sentient entities. We can actually see other people as people, and make friends, and have, real interactions. And I've gotten much better as I've gotten older, because I have sought therapy and I have been more self-reflective and more self-aware as I've gotten older. It's just the way things are when you realize that, your life has become kind of empty and lonely because you don't relate to people as real people, and that needs to change. And so I've gotten a lot better as I've gotten older. I don't just manipulate people. It's not the way it goes. Another one is that we don't feel sadness or happiness. Again, I've talked about how we feel a full range of emotions. We're not just, automatons that just feel rage. Again, lower functioning people on the scale can, rage is the most accessible emotion. That's been true for me. But I've also felt happiness and sadness. Depression, as a matter of fact, is one of the most common disorders with people who have cluster B personality disorders. In fact, the suicide rate for people with ASPD is extremely high because of the isolation and depression that we experience. And depression and sadness are obviously very closely linked emotions. So that is very much not true. And of course we feel happiness. Like, my baseline when I'm not experiencing the depression is I'm a pretty, happy person, generally speaking. Like, I'm just kind of like the way I am right now. I don't feel like, I don't come off as like lugubrious and like Eeyore. Oh God, that's not me. I'm generally like a pretty upbeat, okay person, So there you go. Let's see. Another thing that's a misfortune is that Another thing is that misconception is that we always blame others for our misfortunes. All that we can't take responsibility. Again, as I've said, when we're more high functioning on the spectrum, we absolutely take responsibility for our actions. That's part of the healing process, is that we take responsibility for who we are and what we've done, our mistakes in the past, and like our shitty behavior. That's just part of who it is. Now, like, a low functioning person is not self-aware, and of course they will blame others for their behavior. So again, it's on that spectrum. So there we go. I just really wanted to touch on that because, people put us into this cookie cutter mold of just shitty behavior all the time, and this is not the case. Now, what I wanted to say is, like, there are some things that are true about us, which tend to be kind of stereotypical, that can be true, not always, but tends to lean towards truth more often than not. And that's one thing. One thing is that we can read people very well. Now, if you think about it, people who manipulate others, we can do so because we tend to be able to read people well, and that is for sure the case. Now, we can use that power for good or evil, and if we're more high functioning, we tend to use that power for good. So, for instance, when someone tells me something about themselves, I tend to perceive that in not just like the surface of what they're telling me, but I read the subtext. Like, if someone tells me that they were raised by a single mother, I think, okay, well, latchkey kid, needed to learn to be very self-sufficient at a young age, probably was a bit of a loner, probably has trouble trusting people, is, all these other things that I can read the subtext for, because that's just what is kind of implied by someone who was raised by a single parent. And I was raised by a single parent, and that's that fits me to a T. And also it's kind of like, that's a very Gen X kind of thing, and I get that, you know, even if you're not Gen X, that's very much our experience for a lot of us. Just so stuff like that, you know, we can read people relatively fairly well, even if we're not very emotionally empathetic, hooked into people. We've got that cognitive empathy, and we can really read people well because of that. It's an intellectual thing. Let's see, so another one is that us being pathological liars. That is often true with people with ASPD. It's just a defense mechanism from our childhood. But again, on a spectrum. Even though lying comes very easy to people with ASPD, we can learn to turn that around as we become more healthy and more self-aware. We realize that we don't need to do that. Like CBT therapy can teach us that we don't need to lie all the time, you know, like we did when we were children, as a defense mechanism from the abuse that we experienced, if that makes any sense. Like, I realize I don't need to lie all the time now as an adult. It's because that experience from my childhood, those days are over. Like, it's not necessary to lie all the time. That's just another, you know, example of like how our childhood affects us, but we don't need to continue those behaviors anymore as adults, you know. And something I talked about before was underdeveloped fear response. That tends to be true for a lot of us, and which is something I feel is a positive thing, and so I have no problem with that one, but it tends to be true for a lot of us, and I've explained that in a previous video. We tend to be impulsive. That is true. And that's just one of those things that comes easily to us. That's an ASPD thing, and you know, it's just kind of across the board true. Although those of us who lean more towards it, like the more high functioning, more intellectual, tend to be a bit less impulsive and tend to think things through a bit more. Again, on the spectrum, you know, I can be impulsive certainly, but I'm less so than someone who's a little bit less, like, lower functioning. Again, that's like an intellectual thing. If you tend to be more intellectual, you think things through more. Although I have done impulsive things in the past when I was younger, you know. Traits of narcissism in women, that is very true. We've discussed that before. It's just like a gender kind of thing that tends to be true because we tend to mirror more. It's just like a thing, it's a more feminine trait because we're less violent, and that's like a more subtle way that we tend to manipulate people. And I already went to manipulative. Pattern of short-term relationships. Yes, we can have a hard time connecting with people emotionally, especially when we're younger and we have, you know, difficulty with relationships because of trust issues. That can be a big one for us, and I think it's pretty obvious as to why we have trouble with trust, you know, from our childhood. And I have had that pattern myself, although I tend to go years between relationships. I think I've talked about how I tend to be happier when I'm single, and when I do have relationships, they don't tend to last very long, again, probably for the same reason. I'm just more comfortable being alone because I tend to fall into bad habits when I'm in relationships, and I don't like that about myself, and so I just kind of prefer to kind of go it alone. And I just kind of like my own company. I like not being dictated to and not having to answer to someone else, you know. And I think that kind of falls, you know, true for a lot of us because we were dictated to a lot when we were children. We were controlled a lot as children, and relationships kind of seem to be that way. We interpret relationships to be kind of like that, you know, and again with the trust issues. So another one is that we are very vengeful people, and that, you know, we seek revenge for wrongs done to us at all times, and we are cold and calculating. That can be true. I'm gonna put this down now. And I have done this in the past, but I believe for very good reason. I've sought revenge in a very cold, calculating way for previous sexual assaults that I've experienced. And I took my time figuring out how I was going to, you know, get revenge, because oftentimes, you know, going through the usual channels of lawful channels isn't always satisfactory. And I just didn't feel like it was going to be enough. And so I won't get into detail about how that happened, but I have done that and it was satisfactory to me. The one time I didn't go the cold calculating route was when, I think I mentioned before, when I was about 12 or so, this kid was harassing me for quite a long time, and finally I blew my top and ended up giving him a concussion. So, but again, it took a really long time until I snapped, and then that is what happened. So I think that could be considered to be revenge, and he never bothered me again. So we can be vengeful people, certainly, but it's not like for just tiny, small slights. It's not like we sit there thinking about every little slight that's ever done to us. I don't think we tend to think in those terms. It tends to be like larger, more intense, more, bigger wrongs done to us than just little, niggly little things like, you cut me off in traffic or something stupid like that. It tends to be a lot more, a more serious offense. And I know that a lot of people, we talk about things like that in our group, and it tends to be a recurring theme that seems to be a true for a lot of us. So those are things that are true about us. And there you go. So once again, I hope that this was like a helpful video, kind of clarifying things like truths and not so true things, because again, there's so much misinformation out there about what we're really like. Pardon me, my nose itches, cat hair as usual. And like my big goal here is to clear up misconceptions about what we're really like. We're just, we're people who's, it's a normal human behavior, normal just stuff that people do, only kind of like taken to like an extreme on some levels. And then also we are able to change and grow. We're able to change our behaviors just like anybody else who's got negative behaviors that they display. Therapy can help anybody, even us. We are not just evil creatures, we're not possessed by Satan. We're not, out to get people all the time. We're not emotionless, horrible, people who just can't be helped, can't be changed. We're human beings like anybody else. It's not all that serious. It's not all that dramatic, People always liken people with ASPD and with psychopathy as like, they immediately think of like Ted Bundy and like, John Wayne Gacy and people who are just like these criminals. But that's like with anything else, that's like the smallest portion of cross-section of people who have our illness, like the squeaky wheel gets the grease kind of thing. That's not the majority of who we are at all. It's just with any cross-section of humanity, you get like the ones who are the worst get the most attention, and people just assume that's what all of us are like, and that's really not the case at all. It's most of us are just trying to get on with our lives. We're not like these cold, dead, evil people at all. We're just, a bit outside the norm, but we're just, it's not the way people think. And I'm starting to repeat myself here because pain meds are kicking in, but I hope this was helpful again, and I hope that you learned something as usual. And so again, as always, I really appreciate the comments and things that people have to say when they see my videos, and I appreciate the people who have come back and commented again and again. I really like hearing from you guys a lot, and I really appreciate it, especially the people who are either studying or are psychiatrists, psychologists. It's really good for me to hear from you guys because I like your perspective, and I'm glad that you appreciate my perspective. It's really good to hear your experiences and your observations, and those of you who have either have ASPD or a cluster B personality disorder or know someone who has, and whether the experience was positive or negative, I like hearing about it because it gives me perspective too, because a lot of you have had negative experiences, and I get that because I've not always been the best person either, and I completely own that. So I do appreciate it, I really, really do. So whatever you have to say, I'm here to listen, unless it's just something shitty, I'll just ignore that. But as I've always said, I'm not here to listen to people just saying something shitty for the sake of being shitty. I'll just ignore you. But other than that, I'm open to any real conversation, whatever it might be. So again, thanks again for listening. I really appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you really soon.